It's time for the battle. Today it's going to be Conch versus Daith Piercings. Coming up next on Piercing Battles, episode number 14. For those who are new here, welcome to the Body Piercing and Tattooing channel. Hope you're finding the videos helpful and useful. But yeah, you might not know who I am. My name is DaVo. I'm a professional piercer and have been since 1994. I own and operate the Axiom Body Piercing Studio, located right here in Des Moines, Iowa, inside Skin Kitchen Tattoo. So what I'm going to do today is we're going to take 5 rounds, 5 topics, and decide which of these 2 piercings is the winner, whatever that means. Basically, these are designed kind of to give people that are thinking about maybe one or the other, kind of some things to think about the advantages of one over the other. What we're going to cover is anatomy, placement, healing, jewelry choices, and living with the piercing. Conch piercings are a piercing that is done through the conch of the ear. The conch is this bowl-like structure in the ear that starts up here at the top and goes all the way down to here. The piercing is done straight through it, matching the angle of the actual, curvature of it. Think like a clock. It's done at that angle or compass. Daith piercings are done through the beginning of the helix, which is this area right in here, just above the ear canal, done straight up and down, kind of perpendicular, a 90-degree angle with that tissue. Jewelry-wise, when they're initially pierced, conches are done with studs. With Daith piercings, they need to be done with circular or curved jewelry, preferably circular jewelry. With the announcements out of the way, let's move on to round number 1, anatomy. The conch. If you have an ear, you probably can get this piercing. As I mentioned earlier, it can be done anywhere kind of on that bowl of the ear. All of us have one. So you're likely going to have one. The only thing you really want to worry about is if you plan on wearing circular jewelry in that particular piercing in your conch. Some people call it an orbital. No, that's not a separate piercing. That is a conch piercing. It's been a conch piercing since the 1980s. It's going to stay a conch piercing. Just because you put a different piece of jewelry in it doesn't make it a new piercing. You have to take into consideration that the piercing is as high up to the outer part of the ear that it can comfortably wrap around all of the structure of the ear that's here, the helix and this flat area past the antehelix. Daith piercings, a little bit more complicated. This ridge that's in here needs to, I always have to look at this and make sure, because this thing's kind of weird shaped, but everybody's ear is a little weird shaped. So with this, we're placing it in this area. It needs to be pronounced enough or high enough, I guess would be the way to put it, to support the jewelry, so the jewelry can lay flat. If it's too thin or too low, or if there isn't going to be room above it, see this antehelix, which is this part right here where we do rook piercings. If there isn't enough space in here for that jewelry to comfortably sit, it will put pressure on the piercing and cause issues. So there needs to be enough room, and that area needs to be pronounced enough. On that one, I'm going to give it to the conch. Everybody has the anatomy for it. There's not really a lot of nuances that you need to worry about. If you want to wear a ring in it, that might be a little bit more complicated when it comes to jewelry selection and sizing and placement. But for the most part, the Daith has a lot more that we need to consider before saying, yeah, it's going to work. And that moves us on to placement variety. Round number 2. Conch piercings. Placement. You have a lot of options depending on the size of your ear. You can do multiple ones. You can do more than 2. You can do them in a line. You can do all kinds of fun stuff. You can even do industrial conches where it's one conch to the other conch. You can do conch to antehelix, all kinds of fun stuff. The reality is it really depends on what your goal is as far as wearing jewelry. That would be the only restraint. If you plan on wearing a ring, probably this thinner area where this part is not as pronounced is going to be a better option, kind of that traditional mid. However, if you want something unique and different, you can put down here behind the antitrachus. You could do a hidden They call them hidden or floating, and I've done these probably a couple of videos on this. Rooks, where it's right up in here and just a chain hangs down. All kinds of fun stuff. With the Daith piercing, placement, it needs to be in a situation where it's going to be anchored well, that it's not going to be heavily into the ear canal below that. Also, it needs to be done in a way where the jewelry will lay flat. So you don't want it too deep in there. It's kind of a one chance kind of situation. There are some people where that area is pronounced enough that they can do multiple ones. I've done them. The coolest thing was we did a bigger ring on one of them and then a smaller one. So there was a ring inside of a ring inside of your ear. Kind of a cool look. This one I'm also going to give to the Conch, just basically because there are so many placement options to work with and be creative and do on the ear. So after 2 rounds, that makes the score Conch 2, Daith 0. That moves us on to round number 3, the healing. Conch piercing heals out about 3 to 8 months. It varies from person to person. It's easy to isolate depending on how deep it is in the ear. If it's more towards the edge of the ear, it's going to take a little bit longer because it's more likely to get contact. Tends to go through multiple stages of grumpiness. This is a piercing that I refer to it as a toddler piercing. One day it's the most beautiful thing and wonderful thing in the world, right? And the next day it is the biggest grump you've ever met in your entire life and you want to tear your hair out and move out of town and just leave it there. It kind of goes through those phases. It might require multiple times downsizing and upsizing the jewelry. It can be a little tricky sometimes, mainly because if you put any pressure on that area, it's flexible and that movement can cause problems. Daith piercing, on the other hand, is pretty well isolated, so contact with it is not as big of an issue. It can be easy to isolate, usually heals out in about 3 to 6 months, and there's no downsizing required at all or changing the jewelry size during the healing process. That round goes to the Daith. It's an easier piercing to heal, in my opinion. It has less nuances and less grumpiness and weirdness. Easier to isolate. So, after 3 rounds, that makes the score Conch 2, Daith 1. Moving us on to round number 4, jewelry choices. With the Conch initially piercing, it needs to be done with a stud piece of jewelry. After it heals, you may be able to switch out to a ring, depending on our circular jewelry, depending on its location. There's a huge variety of different ends that you can put on these, especially if you're working with threadless jewelry, where you go from manufacturer to manufacturer to manufacturer to manufacturer. It's unlimited what the jewelry options are. Daith piercings, on the other hand, you're pretty much stuck with either a circular barbell or a curved barbell. Now, that's the bad news. The good news is because these are usually done at 16 gauge, a lot of septum jewelry, which is very popular and in high demand, and thus there's a lot of different options out there, will work in these. So there's a lot of variety as far as rings. Circular or curved barbells, they're just, I don't know, they don't look as good in this piercing, in my opinion, and they just get kind of hidden. And really all you have is just different ends that maybe aren't that spectacular. So that one is going to the Conch. Meaning, after 4 rounds, Conch 3, Daith 1. And that moves us on to round number 5, living with the piercing. The final round to decide this. I think we all know where this is going, but we'll go through it anyway. With the Conch piercing, you're looking at, it's easy to hide, especially with stud jewelry. Ring jewelry, if you put a ring or circular jewelry in it, it might be a little bit more difficult to hide, but for the most part, it's going to be pretty socially acceptable. People don't really freak out about ear piercings, not as much as they do facial piercings, etc. So it's not going to affect employment or anything else. Even after it heals, in seasons, you should avoid contact. This piercing can get grumpy even after it's healed and well seasoned. can close very rapidly. I do suggest leaving something in it indefinitely, only taking out jewelry to put it back in. This piercing can go through grumpy phases even after it heals, where if it's bumped or slept on or what have you, suddenly it'll flare up and you'll have issues. Rings have a lot more contact or circular jewelry than studs do. If you plan on wearing that, you really are kind of asking for it to get caught in hair, clothes, helmets, hats, everything. So keep that in mind when choosing what you want in your piercing. Daith piercings. Different ballgame. It is easy to hide. And pretty much most people are not even going to, they may know you have it, and when they see it, they're going to go, oh, that's a cool ear piercing. So it doesn't really affect social issues as much as a facial piercing would. Less contact than other piercings. So it's a little bit easier to isolate during the healing process and afterwards. So you're not having to worry about bumping it as much. However, the biggest drawback is because of its location and depending on your anatomy, you may have issues wearing earbuds or any type of device or thing that you stick in your ear canal, even long after it heals. It's just, there's just so much room there, and depending on the size of your ear, anatomy, etc., and where it had to be placed, it may definitely affect your ability to use those things. So if that's part of your daily life, this may not be a piercing that you want to get. And it's easy to isolate. It's not really a piercing that you have to worry about as much as the conch. I don't think people bump them as much as people bump conches. So, yeah, it goes. So that final round, I'm going to give you the conch just basically because of the earbud thing. It is a part of a lot of people's lives. And I have gone through the consultation with people that are coming in to get that done. And that was probably and still is one of the most deciding factors for people to go, what else can I get on my ear that's in that same kind of area that isn't going to impact my ability to use a stethoscope or earbuds? So after 5 rounds, the final score is Conch 4, Daith 1. As I said, I never know if this helps any or not. It really doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean that if you have a conch piercing, you're more superior to those that have Daith piercings. One of the things I didn't cover in this is Daith piercings' connection to migraine headaches. Here's the deal. Your piercer is an acupuncturist, and all of that is based on acupuncture. Whether or not it would continue to stimulate the vagus nerve and cause any impact whatsoever is questionable at best. I've had extremely mixed results from clients that did it for that reason. My advice to you is want the piercing and hope that it causes the relief. It's your best option. Do you have either of these piercings? What's your experience like? Did I forget something? Is there something else that might be helpful to someone else? Please leave a comment. Till next time, here's hoping your piercings heal with ease and without a single issue. And if you're in the Des Moines, Iowa area, I would love to see you for your piercing needs in the future. Have a good day, everybody. Take care.